Good evening, sir. I am Shalomeo Ampit. Tonight I will be discussing the Great Gatsby novel. Before we proceed, let's have a short review about the history of this novel. The novel was inspired by what we call Just Age, or the Roaring Twenties. The Great Gatsby vividly captured its historical moment, which is the economic boom of post-war America, such as the new jazz music and the free-flowing liquor, wild parties that is a new freedom for women. During this time, women wear dresses, which make them feel more fashionable. About the authors of this novel is none other than Scott Fitzgerald, Key Fitzgerald, or Francis Scott Key Fitzgerald. He was born on September 24, 1896 at St. Paul, Minnesota, U.S. and died on December 21, 1940, Hollywood, California. He is an American short story writer and a novelist famous for his depictions of the Just Age. His most brilliant novel being The Great Gatsby in 1925. When we say Just Age, it was a period in the 1920s and 1930s in which jazz music and dance styles rapidly gained nationwide popularity in the United States. So, this is how the story of Jay Gatsby begins. Jay Gatsby and Daisy Bunchanan are really in love with each other. But where Daisy is a young, rich woman who fell in love with Jay Gatsby. But Jay Gatsby is just a simple young military officer and a son of a farmer. Then one day, Daisy's parents decided to let their daughter marry Tom, a very rich man. So Jay Gatsby was very sad. This is now why he worked hard. This is for his American dream so that Daisy would be choosing him someday. They begin hard work to become a rich and wealthy man. Here's the summary of the novel. Nick, a young man from Minnesota, moves to New York in the summer of 1922 to learn about the band business. This is how Nick enters the life of Jay Gatsby, or discovered something about Jay Gatsby. He rent a house in the West Egg district of Long Island, a wealthy but unfashionable area populated by the new rich and a group who had made their fortunes too recently to have established social connections and who are prone to garish display of wealth. So it means to say that people here are all very wealthy, or they are powerful. They have their own futures, or they create their own money. Nick's next door neighbor in West Egg is a mysterious man named Jay Gatsby, who lives in gigantic Gothic mansion and throws extravagant parties every Saturday night. So it means that Jay Gatsby is really rich and he has a mansion, and of course he had parties every Saturday night. Nick is unlike the other inhabitants of West Egg. He was educated at Yale and has social connection in East Egg, a fashionable area of Long Island home to the established upper connection. Unlike Nick, he is an educated individual than Jay Gatsby. Nick drives out to East Egg one evening for dinner with his cousin Daisy Bonchanan. Nick and Daisy were cousin, and of course at the very beginning Daisy was married to Tom, an erstwhile classmate of Nick. Daisy and Tom introduced Nick to Jordan Baker, a beautiful, cynical young woman with whom Nick begins a romantic love story. When we say cynical, it is something who is, or someone who is selfish or who is distrustful. Nick also learns a bit about Daisy and Tom's marriage. Jordan tells him that Tom has a lover, Myrtle Wilson, who lives in the Valley of Ashes, a gray industrial dumping ground between West Egg and New York City. Not long after his revelation, Nick travels to New York City with Tom and Myrtle. Nick discovered that Daisy, Tom's wife, was unhappy with his marriage life because Tom has an affair and her name is Myrtle. So at a vulgar Gaudi party in the apartment that Tom keeps for the affair, Myrtle begins to taunt Tom about Daisy and Tom respond by breaking her nose. So every time that Myrtle would talk about Daisy, of course Tom will get angry with Myrtle because he don't want to mention about Daisy. Not long after his revelation, Nick travels to New York City with Tom and Myrtle. So at a vulgar Gaudi party in the apartment that Tom skipped for a fair, Myrtle begins to taunt Tom about Daisy and Tom responds by breaking her nose. As the summer of progress, Nick eventually garners an invitation to one Gatsby's legendary party. So this is the great opportunity that Nick had been waiting, which is to meet Jay Gatsby. He encounters Jordan Baker, again Jordan Baker, the one where Nick falls in love at the party, and they meet Gatsby himself, a surprisingly young man who affects an English accent and has remarkable smile and calls everyone old spot. So on that party, Jay Gatsby had arrived and meet Nick. So Gatsby asked to speak to Jordan alone, and through Jordan, Nick later learns more about his mysterious neighbor Gatsby. Tells Jordan that he knew Daisy in Louisville in 1917 and is deeply in love with her. He spent many nights staring at the green light and at the end of the dock across the bay from his mansion. Gatsby's extravagant lifestyle and wild parties are simply an attempt to impress Daisy. Gatsby now wants Nick to arrange a reunion between himself and Daisy, but he is afraid that Daisy will refuse to see him if she knows that he still loves her. So all of that wealthy power that Jay Gatsby had, it is all that is all for Daisy because he want Daisy, he want to get back Daisy. Nick invites Daisy to have tea at his house without telling her that Gatsby will also be there. After an initially awkward reunion, Gatsby and Daisy re-establish their connections. So their love wrinkled, they begin an affair. So after a short time, Tom grows increasingly suspicious of his wife, a relationship with Gatsby. So at luncheon at the Bonchonan's house, Gatsby stares at Daisy with such undisguised passion that Tom would realize Gatsby is in love with her. Though Tom is himself involved in an extramarital affair, he is deeply outraged by the thought that his wife could be unfaithful to him. But at the very beginning, Tom is the one who is unfaithful to his wife because he had an affair and she is Martel. He forces the group to drive into the New York City where he confronts Gatsby in a suite of the Plaza Hotel. Tom asserts that he and Daisy have history that Gatsby could never understand, and he announces to his wife that Gatsby is a criminal. His fortune comes from bottling alcohol and other illegal activities. So when we say bottling, it is related to illegal manufacture of businesses or the illegal sales. Daisy realized that her allegiance is to Tom, and Tom continuously sent her back to East Egg with Gatsby, attempting to prove that Gatsby cannot hurt him. When Nick, Jordan, and Tom drive through the Valley of Ashes, however, they discover that Gatsby's car has struck and killed Myrtle, Tom's lover. They rush back to Long Island where Nick learns from Gatsby that Daisy was driving the car when he struck Myrtle, but that Gatsby insisted to take the blame. The next day, Tom tells Myrtle's husband, George, that Gatsby was the driver of the car. George, who has slipped to the conclusion that the driver of the car that killed Myrtle must have been her lover, find Gatsby in the pool in his mansion and shoot him dead. He then fatally shoots himself. So what was happened? When George, the husband of Myrtle, found out that Myrtle is or was died. So he find who is the owner of that car, and it is Jay Gatsby. So he shoot Jay Gatsby, and then he shoot himself. So they all died. Nick stages, Nick stages a small funeral for Gatsby, ends his relationship with Jordan, and moves back to the Midwest to escape the disgust he feels for the people surrounding Gatsby's life and for the emptiness and moral decay of life. Among the wealthy on the East Coast, Nick reflects that just as Gatsby's dreams of Daisy was corrupted by money and dishonesty, the American dream of happiness and individualism was disintegrated into the mere pursuit of wealth. Though Gatsby's power to transform his dreams into reality is what makes him a great, Nix reflects that the era of dreaming, both Gatsby's dreams. So that's the end of the story. Where Jay Gatsby is was died and George and Myrtle. So here is the character of the story. Say Nick Carraway, our narrator but not the book's main character, coming east from the Midwest to learn about the bond business. So Jay Gatsby, a self-made man who is driven by his love or obsession with Daisy Bunchanan. Daisy Bunchanan, a very rich young woman who is trapped in dysfunctional marriage and oppressed by her meaningless life. So Tom Bunchanan, Daisy's very rich but adulterous and lying a racist husband. Next is Jordan Baker, a professional golfer who has relationship with Nick. Myrtle Wilson, the somewhat vulgar wife of car mechanic who is unhappy in her marriage. George Wilson, Myrtle's browbeaten, weak, and working class husband. So next, the themes of the literary piece. First is money and materialism. So why? The novel is fascinated by how people make their money, what they can and can't buy with it, and how the pursuit of wealth shapes the decision of people and make them paths their lives follows. The American Dream. It is Gatsby, a successful example of what's possible through hard work and dedication. Love, betrayal, and death. Most of the major characters are driven by their love or sexual desire, but none of these connections prove lasting or stable. So in this story, they did not value marriage, but rather than they value what makes them happy, even they hurt someone or even they hurt themselves. So the summary or the relations of this story to real life lessons or experiences is that Great Gatsby proves that love is universal. Therefore, everyone will experience heartbreaks. Sometimes we experience falling in love with someone who's having different socioeconomic background, which really made us hurt and in painful situation because we thought that we are not meant to be because of our social status in life. We always think that the poor is for poor and the rich is for rich. And of course, the American dream is ultimately unattainable. So this is another lesson from the story. Jay Gatsby's had attained great wealth and status on socialite, but his dreams was to have a future with his one true love, Daisy, but it did not happen. So we wonder why the title is The Great Gatsby. So imagine that Jay Gatsby is just a simple poor man, and who could think that one day he's become powerful and he's become the richest man. So that is why it is the Great Gatsby, because Great Gatsby create his life, creates his power and create his wealth. So he worked hard to get her lover and to have his money. So why Great Gatsby? To signify Gatsby's popularity in the story, everyone sees Gatsby as the wealthiest man alive. He throws parties all night to showcase his wealthiest life. So at the very beginning, we note that Jay Gatsby is somebody who is out of nowhere, and Who could imagine that Jay Gatsby is now the richest and can give everything to his women, or the woman that he really loved? So that's the end of the story, and thank you for listening.